In this video, we're going to look at writing equations for the reactions of the halogens with the halide ions, and starting with chlorine reacting with bromide. So the full equation for the reaction chlorine, water, chlorine solution reacting with the potassium bromide solution. So just a reminder that if we're writing an ionic equation, we look for the species that are aqueous and ionic, and we're going to break those apart into their ions. However, just a reminder, if it's covalent and aqueous, we're going to leave those alone. So we're going to keep those as they are. So chlorine is aqueous and covalent. We're not going to break that apart into its ions, but potassium bromide we will. And I'm going to end up with just the bromide ions, because the potassium ions are spectator ions and they're going to cancel out. And that means I'm just going to get chloride ions on this side. If you need to recap writing ionic equations, go back to the introduction topic and watch those videos there. Now, once I've got the ionic equation, what I can do is I can turn it into two half equations by focusing on what is happening to the chlorine. So the chlorine is turning into chloride. To do that, it needs 2 electrons, and that process is reduction, because reduction is gain of electrons. And the bromide ions are turning into bromine, and when they do that, they lose 2 electrons, and that process is oxidation. Okay, so have a look and see whether or not you can pause the video and write the equations for the remaining 2. And let's have a check of what we've got. So we've got the ionic equation, which just shows the chlorine reacting with the iodide to form chloride and iodine. And if we take the chlorine's process, the chlorine is accepting electrons, so it is gaining electrons and being reduced, so it's reduction. And the iodide is turning to iodine, and that is oxidation. And then finally, bromine reacting with potassium iodide. We've got bromine reacting with iodide to form bromide and iodine. And if we split those into the 2 half equations, bromine is gaining electrons, so that process is reduction. And iodide is losing electrons, and that process is oxidation. The last thing that we're going to do is just go back up and just put some colours in, so to match the observations on the previous page. So chlorine water would be pale green, and bromine dissolved in water would be an orange solution. And then again for the second one, chlorine water is pale green, and the iodine solution would be a brown solution. And then we've got the final one where we'd have orange bromine water, and we'd get a brown solution of iodine.